Thank you, everyone, for subscribing to Infinitely Productions. Before we introduce our next guest, we want to give you a little bit of background information. If you're from the Philadelphia area, this man is a legend. He has been working for the Philadelphia Inquirer for many years. Many people consider him to be a Mafia expert. He's respected amongst his community, especially in terms of organized crime telling, journalism, and he's been reported on 60 Minutes. You may also recognize him from Fox 29's YouTube channel, The Mob Talk, with David Stratweiser. He has made many books. One of them he is very famous for is The Blood and Honor Inside the Scarfo Mob, to his Dr. Dealer, the 2020 edition, not to be mistaken for the Mark Bowden book. This one is published in 2020, labeled as Dr. Dealer. Another guest we have was a registered Republican for most of his adult life, and now describes himself unaffiliated with any political affiliations. And he's now published his novel that is a work of fiction, and now we'll be showing you the book on display at this current time. Please give a warm welcome to these two guests here at the Central Library.
So we as prosecutors can decide whether you are someone who might be telling the truth, and you can get a sense of us.
What about the use of informants? I mean, and that's something else that I see again and again, defense attorneys constantly hammering at. You've made a deal with the government, you're going to say whatever the government wants you to say, and should the government be making deals with the devil? As a prosecutor, and the book gets into some of that, there's a couple interesting informants here. How did you deal with that, and what's your... I guess the moral question is, should we be doing that? When did we decide to do that? Can we do it?
It's a really hard question, because if you're pursuing really bad people, the problem with really bad people is they don't surround themselves with good people. And so if you're going to find out what went on in a Cosa Nostra meeting, or maybe in a meeting at, in a government office,
right.
And if that leader has attracted and retained people of questionable character, that's your only choice.
Yeah.
And so there's a necessity to it, and we always used to say to juries, look, it'd be great if I could call, I don't know, a priest or a rabbi in here to tell me about, Joe's conduct, but he doesn't hang out with priests and rabbis. He hangs out with a bunch of criminals.
There was a prosecutor in Philadelphia who used the line, "Swans don't swim in sewers."
Okay.
I mean, and when you cover many trials, a lot of this almost becomes cliche, because prosecutors and defense attorneys use the same speeches. It's just, it's a new jury and it's a new case, but you hear the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, if I'd heard that, I would have used it, though. Yeah, swans and sewers. I got to tell my kids that, because they'll be able to use that.
That's a good one, yeah.
But look, it's a necessity, but it's dangerous. And I used to train prosecutors and tell them, every cooperating witness is a loaded gun pointed at you and your career and this office, because they have incentives to lie, especially in Cosa Nostra cases. They're only alive because they're manipulative. They're only alive because they look around and they make alliances and they can lie well. That's how they've survived. There's a Darwinian aspect to getting to the top of a mafia organization. And so you have to realize you cannot trust this person. And it's really hard when you spend a ton of time with people. I spend a lot of time in small rooms with really bad people, and they're funny, and they love their families, and they want to talk sports, and so there's a connection that develops, and you can forget who's there. Because I also, having spent a lot of time with people who killed a lot of people, I used to tell my kids, I'm really a depressing dad, but I used to tell my kids, never forget evil has an ordinary face. Right? I can remember some of my mob witnesses, one of them had killed 38 people.
Right.
He'd actually killed 37, he told us. Then when he got on the witness stand, he remembered he had actually killed 2 people by the same name. 2 guys named Pino D'Amico. And so he's like, through a translator, it was a Sicilian. Through a translator, he says, one moment. I killed 2 men named Pino D'Amico. And so I spent a lot of time with that guy. And a depressing thing is, no music plays when you're with somebody like that.
Yeah.
The light doesn't change. You're across from a human being, and they'll all tell you the same thing, which is, the first time I killed someone, it was really, really hard. Yeah. After that, not so much. But what you come to realize is they're people. They're philosophical in turns, they're sad, and so you can be drawn in, and that can lead to abuse. And so you try to train prosecutors well to know how to deal with cooperators, and also remember that because there's all kinds of moral peril, you got to work up. You never want to be flipping and giving the benefits of a cooperation to a higher up to go get the underlings, because you're then spending the government's credibility and its power needlessly. So it's a really dangerous thing, incredibly important, though, to the criminal justice system. But you see it all the time. You may see it if cases are brought against former leaders of this country, who will then argue that the witnesses aren't credible. And the other thing we would argue, I'm sure you've heard this, is, yeah, this witness is a terrible person. Is he my friend? No.
We didn't choose him.
He's the defendant's friend. Who's he been hanging out with for 35 years? The defendant. He chose him.
Given that background and given your experience there, how did you react when the former president was complaining about flippers? When I heard him talking about that, to me it was an echo of a lot of wise guys who have said the same thing to me. Flippers, this is not right, you shouldn't be. And we had the highest office in the land saying, this is not right, this is not the way the system ought to work.
Not to jump on him, but he also called them rats.
Yeah.
And so he echoes in a lot of ways the language of Cosa Nostra. And so my reaction was, not a shocker, here's someone who doesn't really care about the rule of law, because they're not rats, they're not flippers, they're people who have pled guilty, admitted their culpability, and in exchange for the opportunity to have the judge reduce their sentence, are testifying truthfully at a trial. And you call them rats only to try and discourage them from testifying, to rattle them and to rattle their families. And even though they're strong people, they're rattleable, right? Because they don't want to be in that spot. And one of the things I tell about in the book, I try to draw from my real experiences in the book. I had a witness who was a world-class art thief who testified against a bunch of mobsters for me. And as he walked into the courtroom, one of them mouthed, "You're dead." And I didn't see it because I was standing at the podium and the judge didn't see it. But I looked at my witness's face and all of a sudden it had changed. And I was trying to pull his testimony out of him, pull it out of him. And I decided to try and capture that in this story. So I went back to the actual trial transcripts. Right. So the dialogue in there, it's kind of real fiction. It happened. But they're not, they will feign tough guys in a lot of ways, but you can rattle them with language like that and with intimidation like that.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and check out more of our content. Feel free to give your feedback and suggestions on what we should do next in the comments. This is Infinite Lee Productions. We love ya.